I'm Judy Ruff, and I work here at the Society of Certified Senior Advisors. And I think I just want to go around quickly so that our panel knows who you are and what your business is. So just real quick, no big explanation, just what the type of business. Amy, you want to start?
Amy Carter, I'm a geriatric case manager. Hi, Connie Golis. I have a nursing escort service. Follow that.
That was fast. Sybil Rowley, Regional Developer for Synergy Home Care.
Ann Sommerberg, Stacy's Helping Hand, and campus interim case manager specializing in care facilities and resources.
Gabby Bortz, Resources Enhancing Later Years, focused on older adults who need to do some connecting, learning, exploring, find things in life that have meaning, purpose, and enjoyment.
I'm Linda Marcellek, Designing Brighter Tomorrows. It's an educational website and social media for living the second half of life, having information and having education and some inspiration. And that's what I do.
And this is Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Alan.
You see, he's important.
Yeah, well, this is very good.
For $10, I'll put the picture in the paper. For $100, I won't.
So this is Alan Ohashi, and he is the executive producer at Boulder Community Media. And this is sort of a test run, a dry run of videotaping us so that we can use this on our websites. And he's certainly available to any of you that might be interested in doing something like that. So he's here.
Nice.
He's a movie producer.
Oh, wow. You guys are big time.
And he's one of my clients as well, so. And I can, I'll introduce the rest of everybody.
We're here because of you.
Yes, I know. So this is Joan Dyer, and her company is Elder Advocates, and she is in Fort Collins. And this is Courtney Smith. She is the president of ADAM, which is the American Association of Daily Money Managers, which is the organization that we are all members of. And she is also a daily money manager as well as a fiduciary, and she's in the Denver area. And Doug Windus, and did I say that correctly?
Close enough. Wines.
Juan.
Like two
I
bottles.
didn't say that correctly. And his company is Cash Management Solutions, and he is also in the Denver area. He's a daily money manager. And I'm Barbara May, and I know most of you, and my company is Smart Money in Colorado, and I'm a daily money manager, and I do a little bit of fiduciary work, and I'm moving in that direction. So.
And Barbara's a CSA like the rest of us.
So good. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Courtney because she's going to talk a little bit about ADAM and the Colorado Guardianship Association and how that applies to older adults and the disabled. And then we'll each talk about our own businesses and what's unique about each one of them. And then I've got a couple of handouts there on how to pick or how to select a daily money manager or a fiduciary. So I'll talk a little bit about that.
Great. Okay. Welcome. Again, my name is Courtney Smith. I own Benefit Pay Services. I've been doing this work for, it'll be 14 years in February. And I am located in the Denver area. Actually, my office is in Cherry Creek across the street, so it's very convenient for me. But I'm also this year's president for the American Association of Daily Money Managers, and I've been a member of that group probably for at least 10 years, and I've been on the board for a long time as well. So I think making me president was their way of being like, okay, get her off the board. No, so we call ourselves ADAM, for short, for the American Association of Daily Money Managers, because it's a mouthful. We just went through our 5-year strategic plan last year, and so this year is the first year that we're implementing our strategic plan. And a lot of that is based around public awareness and education to the media and to the public and to caregivers and families and other professionals and other people who are looking at a possible career change to really describe and get up the information about daily money management, what it is, how it works, what it is that we do and how it affects our community, and when it makes sense for people to maybe engage in those services. So that's really the premise of our 5-year strategic plan, is really getting the word out on a national basis. We're a national organization. We have almost 800 members across the country. We just had our national conference a couple weeks ago in Scottsdale. So I'm still missing the sun, but so I put a little handout here for you about what is ADAM. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, other than it's really the place, it's the clearinghouse for both daily money managers as members, to have a place to go, much like CSA, to get education, networking. We have a certification program called Professional Daily Money Manager. If you have that certification, I was actually the first class to get certified and helped write the exam many years ago. But it's a great way for us to build our credibility within the marketplace. We have, not just anyone can sit for our exam. You have to actually meet the eligibility criteria. You have to have been a paid daily money manager for up to 15 hours, as well as a background check, credit check, and things like that before we'll even let you sit for the exam. So that makes us a little bit different in that just if you're just not getting into the industry, you can't just become certified tomorrow. So we do have our certification, and we take it really seriously, and we're always honing in on that and setting the bar. So the first place is for our members to come collectively to engage and to get the information and education. And then it's also a source of information for our referral partners, for families to come to, for potential individuals to come to, because not every daily money manager works with seniors and older adults. We have daily money managers that only work with high net worth individuals. We have daily money managers who only work with small businesses. So it's really a place for anyone to come to learn about daily money management and how it might benefit them, whether it's the end user or a family member looking for services for their loved one, or for the media or another professional. So you can kind of go through here, but our website is on here, and it's a great place to go to find a daily money manager. So you can search by zip code, by area, for a daily money manager, where you might be from, or if you have family that are out of state, you can go to the website and find daily money managers in other parts of the country and see what kind of their specialty is and if they're certified. And so it's a great way for you to also provide additional resources and referrals to your family members or to your clients who may be out of state or moving out of state. So if you have any questions about ADAM, feel free to contact me. I could talk about this all day long, but I really want to get to sort of the meat of our presentation, which is about daily money management services specifically. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Art. Oh, did you want me to talk about CGA and NGA?
Yes, and,
Okay,
and
sorry.
your business as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just roll with it then. So there is a national, so ADAM is for daily money management. And then there's 2 associations for fiduciaries. The National Association is the National Guardianship Association. And that's similar to ADAM in that it's a national membership organization for guardians and conservators and fiduciaries, medical powers of attorneys, care managers, to come collectively together. That's our sort of membership association where we go get certified. We go for our education, our conferences, things like that. And then we have a local association that would be probably of interest to you, and that's the Colorado Guardianship Association. I sit on the board for that association as well, and we meet every other month, and we do a 1-hour CLE presentation. And it's really made up of all different types of people that are serving the senior community. So we have fiduciaries, guardians, care managers, but we also have home health agencies, attorneys, people that are in different, we have people that are into music therapy for older adults that are part of the group. So we have usually between 40 and 60 people that attend our meetings, and it's very inexpensive to join. And so that's a great local association to get involved in if you're looking to just enhance knowledge and skills and networking in the senior industry. So that's the CGA, or the Colorado Guardianship Association. And again, that's primarily for the fiduciary side, and we are an affiliate of the National Guardianship Association. So we're the affiliate chapter for that. So I guess what I should do is maybe start off a little bit about maybe the difference between the two, because I've sort of separated them now. So some people might be, well, what's the difference between daily money management and fiduciary work? And how I typically describe it is that with daily money management, the client is still in the driver's seat. So with daily money management, our clients still have to have capacity, they're making their own decisions, they're signing their own checks, they're really in charge and in control. And we're there as a liaison, a supporter, an advocate, there to coordinate services, to oversee, monitor. But at the end of the day, the client is in charge and they're in control. They're not losing any rights. With fiduciary work, it's usually typically the opposite of that. So there's a whole spectrum, and Barbara might be getting into this, but there's a whole spectrum within the fiduciary world. And that could be anything from acting as an agent under a financial or medical power of attorney, to a court-appointed guardianship or conservatorship, to trust administration, and then up until post-death, which is where you get into an executor or personal representative services. So in the fiduciary world, there's usually a legal document that we are tied to the client with. So that might be the power of attorney document, that might be the court order for the guardianship or conservatorship, the court order for personal representative of the will, or a trust document as trustee. So with fiduciary, we're literally legally responsible and legally tied to our client, and we're usually taking over some or if not all of the control of that person. So it's much, it's a serious position to be in, because we're affecting people's rights and their autonomy and their independence. So that's a little bit about the difference between daily money management and fiduciary work, just so that I can upfront describe a little bit about the main differences, and then Barbara can get into sort of the details of that later. As far as my work, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for over 13 years in Denver. I have clients all over the country. I had an office in Indiana as well. My services really started off, I kind of back-ended into daily money management. I started off in the fiduciary world before I found daily money management. I really didn't know what I was doing back then. And so most of my world up to this point has been in the fiduciary arena. So that's really what I've been primarily known for, is working with seniors, persons that have mental and physical disabilities, at-risk adults, and then their families. So I do a lot of the fiduciary work as well as daily money management. And my passion is really working with families. I personally believe that a lot of the cases that end up in the court system on the fiduciary side are preventable. They can certainly be prevented, because most of the time it's families who just didn't know any better. It's had the families communicated, had the families been open, transparent, provide information up front, most of them wouldn't end up in the court system, which then becomes very expensive to the protected person, who is typically the older adult. And it's the older adult, who ends up having to suffer oftentimes, because the families just didn't know really what they were getting into, because they're usually an adult child who, says, well, it's my mom, that's my dad, that's my aunt, my grandma, versus coming at it from more of a professional perspective, saying someone can always come in and look in and ask questions. So my personal passion is working with families and teaching them how to work with their loved ones, how to manage the loved ones' finances, how to do it the right way from the beginning, so we can keep them out of the court system. And so that way they can keep their ties, keep their relationships with not only their parent, but also with their siblings, because those are usually the relationships that are affected the most. I am a certified professional daily money manager. I'm also a certified national guardian, so those are my two national certifications, and I love what I do. So.
Great, well, I will sort of piggyback on what Courtney has said. The fiduciary work, it really dovetails with daily money management, and not all daily money managers are fiduciaries or do fiduciary work, but some do. There are, I think, 3 ways, and Courtney, you can jump in here, but there are 3 ways that somebody would take advantage or would need a fiduciary. And one Courtney already talked about is when they are court appointed. If there's family dysfunction, or no family members are willing to step forward, or there is no family, oftentimes it is court appointed, it goes to the court, and a public administrator is appointed as conservator or guardian or both. But the one piece to that is sometimes that's unnecessary if people have done the planning prior. If you have a power of attorney, if you have a financial power of attorney, and if you've already appointed a healthcare power of attorney, and you have to have capacity when you do that. So if you have capacity and you've appointed a power of attorney, then that can be avoided. And unfortunately, many of us don't have power of attorney. And anything can happen to any one of us at any time, so it's something that we should all do, regardless of age, but many people don't.
And regardless of assets as well. I mean, I think
Right.
a lot of people think, well, I have to have wealth or money to make sense. I don't need a will, I don't have anything. And that's just so typically not the case. And especially under the powers of attorney, because the likelihood of becoming disabled at some point in your life is very high. And if you don't do that upfront planning, that's when you end up in the court system, and it's very expensive.
Right.
And you don't get to choose who's managing things for you.
Right. And another way is to, as an individual, you can walk into a bank or a bank that does trust work. There are conservators that you can pay, or you can pay somebody to be trustee of your accounts. Frequently, they charge about 3% of your assets, I think, to have a bank act and have a trust and let them do that. So that is the way some people choose to go. And then, of course, there are private fiduciaries. And that's probably the least expensive way to do, and that's what Courtney is, a private fiduciary, and myself as well. So I think those are the three ways. Is there any, is that?
To get a
Yes,
fiduciary?
yes.
Yeah, it's usually typically the pre-planning, which we all should do, and that's just getting with an estate planning attorney or an elder law attorney and doing your basic estate plan. It's also those who are in a position of crisis because they didn't do their estate planning and now they've become incapacitated. And, or it can work where people are in the crisis, but they still have some capacity, and so they'll do a power of attorney and have it kick in immediately versus on the pre-need side.
So daily money managers, one of the things that even if they don't do fiduciary work, daily money managers can often advise and know when somebody needs a conservator, or advise that, you know, well, you need your will in place, you need a power of attorney, and those sorts of things, so that people have planned, because planning is the key piece. When people don't plan, then that's when problems arise. So, and daily money managers, oftentimes fiduciaries might hire a daily money manager to do the bill paying and the accounting and the, you know, the personal budgeting that needs to be done. So, and I'll just talk a little bit about my business. I've branched out. I don't work just with older adults. So I've had a couple of small businesses. One is Alan and the video production and movie production company that he has, which is a nonprofit. I do finance coaching, which I am trained and experienced in that. So I do work for a nonprofit, and most of what we do is for low income and people who are in financial trouble. I work with budgeting, I do debt management, I identify when somebody might need to file bankruptcy. So that, I can also do that as a daily money manager, but that is, if I go in and somebody's concern is budgeting, I can work with an older adult or someone who's disabled or whoever I'm working with. I can work on a budget, and I can, you know, do the same sorts of things I do as a finance coach for the nonprofit that I work for. So I'm doing that in one case right now. As a daily money manager, I'm actually working with a woman who is in her 60s and is having some financial troubles. So a family member is paying me, but I'm helping her find a job, and I'm helping her with some coaching. So that's another client. I have one man that they're looking to me to become power of attorney. The ex-wife is now power of attorney, but she's not happy with that, she doesn't want that responsibility, so we're kind of working together to make a plan and see how that might work. So that's, so I do various things, and I also, my fiduciary client is, I'm a representative payee for a man who is disabled, and he's in his early 50s, so I manage his government payment, his SSDI. So that's primarily my focus, which is pretty broad. So I'm going to turn it over to Joan, and she can tell you a little bit about her daily money management and her business.
Yeah, so like Barbara said earlier, we're from Fort Collins. So we really serve all of northern Colorado. We serve Fort Collins, Loveland, Greeley, and we are going to be expanding down into Longmont and Boulder early next year. So we're really a growing business, and we found a real need up in northern Colorado. And when I say we, we've got myself, I'm co-owner of the business along with my business partner, Kristen, and we also have an employee who works with us up in Fort Collins, and then we'll be hiring someone to work in the Longmont Boulder area. And so really, to kind of differentiate us, we do fiduciary work and we do daily money management work. And so on the fiduciary side, we do powers of attorney and conservatorships. And what makes us different is that my background is financial planning. So I have a master's in financial planning, and I also passed the certified financial planner exam back in 2012. So I'm actually still working on my experience for that, but it's a very rigorous exam. So I kind of come from the financial planning world, and then my business partner, she is a tax accountant. So we have this, I think, different view of our clients. We automatically think big picture when we meet with our clients. I get really excited when my clients have investments and their situation's really complicated because I want to be able to be that advocate for them, and not to necessarily be their financial planner, but to work closely with their financial planners. And if there's something that doesn't look right with their investments, I'm very open to saying something about it. And if fees are looking high, or just anything doesn't look right, if there's lots of trading going on, I'm going to stand up for my client and talk to their financial planner about that. And I think that that's one really good value that we bring to the table, is we're an advocate for them in that arena. And then with my business partner, she really looks, if I have any questions about their taxes or tax planning for the next year, we want to be focusing on that throughout the year, so that it's not a scramble in March to get everything together. We really want to plan for that. And along with that, I really enjoy the budgeting aspect and making sure that my clients are spending what they can afford, and especially if they're transitioning in life from maybe living in their home to living in an assisted living facility, and they're really unsure about what they can actually afford. We can look at their investments and we can do some projections and say, you're going to be okay, spending this amount of money. So we want to give them that peace of mind going forward, that whatever they decide to do, that it's a good thing for them. We have gotten into the arena of doing payroll for our clients who have independent caregivers. So if any of you have dealt with clients or patients who've hired their own independent caregivers, there's a lot that goes into that. They have to have an established entity, a household employer business. They have to run payroll for their caregivers and make sure that they're filing their state and federal taxes quarterly. And so we actually take care of that for our clients that have that situation, and we use a professional payroll company, so it's really easy for us. We're not, calculating everything, but we're the ones that are helping them, put that into the system and do that monthly for their caregivers. We also help with long-term care claims in that arena, which many of you have dealt with long-term care companies. It can be really frustrating and lots of paperwork, and lots of back and forth, and so a lot of times we'll get authorization from our clients to work with their long-term care companies and to submit those claims along with doing the payroll. And another thing that we've recently done is partner with a local care manager up in northern Colorado. A lot of times our clients, if they're having difficulties with their finances, they're most likely having other medical difficulties. And so we wanted to work closely with a care manager who could come in and do those things that we don't want to do. So she provides guardianship services. She does medical powers of attorney. She can come in and assess the home situation and see what kind of home care they need to bring in. Or if they need to move into a facility and work with the family and kind of take care of that side of things. Because I'm very financially minded, and when we go to that side of the world, it's too much for me to handle. So I want to bring in an expert that can deal with those kinds of things. So that's kind of some of our differences. And I actually brought a little handout about hiring your own caregiver and things to consider. So we'll pass that out at some point, but I thought that might be educational. So.
One thing I forgot before I turn it over to Doug, Judy had asked for us to explain or talk about our certifications and any licenses, and Courtney did that, and so did Joan. I have a bookkeeping certificate, and I actually did all of the education to be a certified financial planner. So I have all those classes. I chose not to be a financial planner, so I did not take the test, the exam. But I certainly know when I need to turn it over to a certified financial planner, and I certainly know what I'm looking at when I look at investment statements and that sort of thing. And I'm currently working on becoming nationally licensed or certified as a professional fiduciary. So that's I'm taking classes through the University of California, and I should be finished in the spring, I hope. So that's, and Courtney mentioned the professional daily money manager. I have been doing daily money management for about 2.5 years, and I think I have enough. I haven't counted up my hours, but I think I'm there. I have not taken that exam or gone that route yet because I'm just now at that point where I have that experience in the number of hours that Adam wants you to have. So, and I can't do everything at once, so I'm doing the fiduciary part, and then I'll look at that next. So I wanted to add that. And so, Doug.
Good morning. I'm going to fill in, some places here and there and not duplicate what's been said already. First of all, I do want to say that how happy I am I wore black slacks, which seems to be the meeting attire among its group. So, that was a happy coincidence. My services, which are similar to that been described, is on my handout, the Daily Money Management Services, and there's a couple notes I want to highlight. And one of those, as you all well know, is that money is such a personal item that it's a very sensitive area to get involved in. You start with the client. I mean, basically, you have to kind of walk in and say, "May I look at your checkbook?" Or with the younger clients, "May I look at your phone?" So you know how personal it is. And Barbara and Courtney's description, I think, is real good in a sense. The daily money manager, as opposed to the fiduciary, is kind of like a co-pilot. So we help the client manage their cash, manage their bills. I look at it as making sure the client is informed that they're writing 24 little $20 checks to all these weird non-profits. And once they're informed, if they say, "Well, that's what I want to do," it's their money. So, I'll kind of gently work with that over time, but that's the first reaction. And my saddest personal story of the client is the one who, just as I was being engaged, had hired a mortgage advisor. And each month, as I researched and looked at this, I was saying no, 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 no. And that was over 4 months. And during that period, the mortgage payments and the second mortgage payments went to the mortgage advisor as opposed to the bank. About 4.5 months after saying, I think this is wrong, I don't think you should do this, the client called me and said, they're gone. And I was never so sad to be right. So then I had to work through saving the house from foreclosure, getting the client back stable to make, payments on time, things like that. It wasn't too long after I started, and it was pretty stressful. I'm tired. I mean, this is. I thought to be helping, seniors over a cup of tea with their bills and things like that. It was, but which kind of leads me to give you some examples of what we do that's related to cash management, but may not be what you think. And they can probably tell you a dozen stories, but some of mine have included coordinating a sale of real estate for the client and just making sure that the client and the sibling understood what was going on. And the client's 88 years old, the sibling I think is almost settled. And making sure that that sale went smoothly in addition to fighting Denver zoning because they had a zoning violation on the property for the house had been uninhabited for 10 years. So the zoning violation was valid, but there were some other complications. I actually got it lifted, $15,000, and right before we went to settlement, they put it back on. So I appealed it the second time, and they wouldn't move it. So now we're thinking about whether to get a lawyer on contingency and see if we can go after him. Because I'm so mad that I won't even charge the client for that part of the work about that zoning violations. But we've done zoning violations. The other thing I think that's important to know is that we don't do what we're not skilled in. So if we don't, I don't do accounting, I do taxes, but I will help find those services for the client. So we take great pride in trying to have good contacts and good referrals for services that we do not provide. For myself personally, I also do services to local governments, which came from my previous job. I was cash manager for the Colorado State Treasury, so I have a background in government. And small local governments tend to be notorious for having too much cash. And they could easily invest out on the yield curve. But I think I'm probably the only DMF that does that, so.
Unique service.
So do you have a law background or anything? Because some of that stuff sounds like law, real estate attorney work.
Well, it's a very careful balance, and I try to be very sensitive to that fact that I'm not a real estate expert, and so all the advice and recommendations came from the real estate agent. And I just made sure that the client and the sibling that was involved clearly understood what was going on and that heard that advice.
Do you have any way to intercede or make something happen short of that 4 months before the house went into foreclosure? That's...
the client has MS, but was not disabled to the point that the client couldn't make his own decisions. He was actually paying many of his own bills, and I was more of an advisor. But the client had tried to get refinance the mortgage, and the banks had turned it down because his credit rating was awful. And he was mad, and they caught him just at the right time. And they lowered his mortgage payment. So actually, he was they had diverted the mortgage payments from the Salvans. It was a smaller amount. And I talked to him, and the first giveaway was that the customer service rep was just as smooth and nice as she could be. It was like, are you local? You're not in some foreign country, And it was like, something's wrong here. But, the client was stubborn, and my standing with the client is so much higher because of that, to the point where I took over paying some of the bills electronically, and I told the client, I said, I can, take all your money if you give me this authority. And the client said, well, I've been ripped off by people I don't know, at least I know you. Which I consider to be a great compliment.
So,
but that's kind of examples.
Things like that, sometimes it's the cousin was neglecting any help, all this time, and they'll turn around and sue you for negligence. You should have known.
Yeah,
stuff.
and that's a worry. I mean, there's no question. I document all my meetings carefully. I document that I told the client, and in this case, the client's family's all in France and hadn't spoken to him in about 10 or 15 years.
They'll come
So,
out of the woodwork.
yeah. Oh, I know. They are people of good word.
One thing I don't think any of us mentioned is that I'm thinking all of us carry liability insurance, errors and omissions. And then as a fiduciary, you need to add insurance onto that, and that becomes fairly pricey. So my own rates are more if I would be doing fiduciary work, just because of the insurance being so costly. But most of us carry insurance because it is such a...
Yeah, and I would say to Doug's point, and I think one of the things that you were bringing up is one of the toughest things about what we do are the clients who have capacity and are borderline. They're the hardest because they have a right to self-determine. People have the right to make stupid decisions and mistakes. We all do it every day, but when it comes to an older adult, we think, oh no, we have to save the world. And unfortunately, those are my hardest clients. The clients that have diminished capacity or don't have capacity, it's much easier to handle because you know what you're dealing with. But when the client has capacity to make their own decisions and you don't agree with the decisions they're making, that's when you have to draw a fine line and you have to sort of make decisions from a different place. So who am I going to get involved? Ethically, from the confidentiality standpoint, who's on my interested party list, who have they agreed or given me permission to talk to? So is it that I go talk to a daughter or a neighbor or a lawyer? Have they given me prior permission to talk to someone if I'm concerned about something that they're doing? Am I a mandatory reporter? Should I go file a report with Adult Protective Services? So you kind of take a step back and you say, okay, I don't agree with this person's doing. They have capacity, but what is it that I can do to sort of help protect the situation if you really feel like they're putting themselves in harm's way to where it's not going to be fixable. But the clients who just want to, buy the magazine or the coin collections and, it's just like, that's how you want to spend your money and that's important to you and that's your priority. I get it. Shoes are mine. So, but we have to give people, and especially older adults, the right to self-determine and to be autonomous and to have independence if they can do so.
And another example of what you speak is a recent example of mine, which I was very worried about, was that before I was engaged, the sibling was paying the bills and missed the homeowner's insurance. And when we noticed all these people getting new roofs on their house, you have homeowner insurance? And of course the client goes, oh yeah, I got homeowner's insurance. Well, double check, no homeowner's insurance. So not only will he have to pay for a new roof out of pocket, but the week that I was scrambling to get homeowner's insurance, I knew the house was going to get hit by lightning. So what she said would be, if somebody came back and said, well, you knew about this and you didn't get it fast enough, or you should have known. In my contract, I have a statement that says I have to be notified of the bills, so that you can't come after me if you never told me about the bill. But it is a very sensitive area, and like Courtney said, it's sometimes, as I'm sure you all know from your work, how sensitive it is trying to balance the independence of the senior with your services. And so I think that I wanted to fill in that, since you're familiar with most of what we do here as daily money managers, the variety, and that we try to specialize on the bill paying and cash management, and know when to refer to financial planners. For example, if the client is too liquid, has too much money. And as I know, my experience was, I worked in Denver City Treasury and the State Treasury as cash manager for the state at the State Treasury. And I have a certification in cash management by a different group in DMM, but that certification still involves banking, payments, everything, but it's at the corporate level. So it was easy to transition into the personal level, just had to knock off about 5 or 6 zeros.
Yeah.
from the dollars. I'll go back to Barbara.
Okay, I gave you 2 handouts, and these are questions to ask. Judy wanted us to cover if you wanted to recommend to your clients how you would look for a daily money manager, or if you felt the need to have a fiduciary. So I know Courtney, in her handout, she included the questions that Adam recommends asking, and I used some of those as well, and I also included some that Judy had. I kind of combined that. So I'm not going to read through them, obviously you've got those, but I'll just add a few notes to some of these. The first one, asking the person what the scope of their business is, of course. What are the services that you provide? And if you don't provide what I need, the person who's the daily money manager can oftentimes recommend somebody who does do those. But some of those would be fiduciary work or bill paying, being a rep payee. Some daily money managers may provide transportation, although that's a little, for me, a little frowned on because of the liability, but doing banking, being able to take someone to the bank and actually help them with banking. So that if they need that, I do some computer services. I've worked with one client on a very temporary basis just to help him set up. He wanted to get Quicken, he wanted to get his budget in order. He wanted to use Quicken, and he was older and didn't really know how to get it loaded and how to set it up. So I met with him 2 or 3 times and helped him do that. Not all daily money managers may do that. So who is your typical client? Some daily money managers don't work with older adults. So when you look at the Adam website, I don't think it tells you what their areas of.
Yes,
not,
it will.
not yet.
Yeah.
But, so, that's something that even on the phone you would want to ask. Is it older adults? Is it the disabled? Is it wealthy, high-end wealthy clients? Is it busy professionals, small business? So what sorts of services and who do you work with? Who's your typical client? Again, carrying liability insurance. Can I see your certificate? Can I see the paperwork? Do you have liability insurance? I think that's an important piece to ask. Asking somebody about their educational background. I was thinking as Doug was talking, I have a master's degree in urban and regional planning. So a lot of my education was in zoning, city zoning and planning and all of those sorts of things. So as Doug is talking about planning, I know a little bit about that. And I didn't even consider that would be something that if I go into someone's home as a daily money manager, I might know something of, along those lines. But also knowing what credentials they have, what certifications, what gives them the authority to work with someone's money, their checkbook, and I think that oftentimes it's difficult to know what that person is comfortable with, and that's the daily money manager's job of really speaking to or getting at what the older adult or whoever your client is, what are they comfortable with? Do they want you to have view-only access to their checking account? Some banks will do that. Do they want you to do they not want anything? Anything to do with it? Do they hands off? They want you to do everything. They want you to pay the bills, make deposits, make withdrawals, but some don't want you to do that. Some want you to have, and you can do it if you have view-only access. Do they want to sign their checks? If you're not power of attorney, you can't sign their checks for them. But if they want to give you power of attorney, you can. There are some daily money managers that won't do daily money management unless they have power of attorney, a few, because they feel like in a sense, it can save the client money because you're not spending a lot of time going and having them sign all the checks and sitting with them. But that's something that not everybody would be comfortable with. So there's other questions here. How do you vet other professionals? One of my questions here was, what is your practice with respect to working with other professionals and family members? So, you would want to ask, or the person would want to ask, how do you vet those other professionals that you work with? And You know, how do you work with families? How do you incorporate the person's family into what you're doing? And for myself, I give them, I know some don't want you to, but I try to give them and encourage them to take monthly reports and monthly Quicken reports, so they see what their balances are and what I've paid, and I have spreadsheets, and I do all of that. But some people don't care about that. They just want you to go off and do that. So, but I think it's important to know, and Courtney has a part in her contract as well as, and I do as well, who are the people that I can talk to? Who, your family members, do you want them to get a report as well? So, and then fees, how do you charge? Do you charge one fee per month? Is it a flat fee that once the daily money manager understands the scope of what they're doing, they may say, well, this will be X dollars per month. I charge per hour. Because I have such different clients. I don't have any just strictly daily money management clients. So I do per hour, not a monthly fee, but that is something. And do you go into people's homes? Or do you do it all online? I mean, it can be done all online. So that's something to ask. And then the privacy clause, I think that's pretty important. I have a separate piece about their privacy and again, who can I talk to? And I think, and then the last question on there, do you have employees? Am I going to be working, if I'm the client, am I going to be working with you? Or are you going to send, next time the doorbell rings and you're supposed to meet with me, is it going to be somebody that I haven't met yet? Are you sending an employee or am I working directly with you? So that was the daily money management. And then you have one about fiduciary work.
Let me interrupt just for a second. I think one important thing if you're helping someone find daily money management services, is just have the daily money manager explain to you and the client, your client, what safeguards can you put into place to ensure that the money is being spent where the client wants it to. And so obviously the signature authority is an important one. But then also a separate disbursement account can be set up where only bills are paid from that, and then it's funded by a family member or whoever the client wants to, or the client themselves can fund it, transfer the money. So there's a number of safeguards that you can do, even if you pay it, if you initiate electronically, then it's just record keeping is very important in that case, so that you could show someone later, a year later, that this money went to the appropriate billers. And you can also set up electronic payment so that if a new vendor is added, someone else's email gets a notice that a new vendor has been added and you haven't added Doug Wines' retirement account in the Bahamas. And so there's a number of safeguards you can set up to try to give the client comfort. And I know from your work, I'm sure, is that some people say, take it all, keep me informed, and other people are monitoring it real carefully. But I always try to practice what I call the unknown third party, who may come in a year later or 2 years later and say, why did you do this? Can you document it? Why did this happen? Why did you do this? And things like that. And I had somewhat emergency situation where I just had to pay the client's bills. And the client has no checks. I had to use my own business checks to do it. And I got 10 pages of documentation. But it was such a situation as that we were going to avoid late payment penalties. They had to get paid right away. We're converting to electronic on that. But there was a change in circumstances where it just happened pretty fast.
And
Go ahead, excuse me.
I think that also comes back around to whenever we work with our clients, we try to establish who is their team. So if it's their financial advisor, their accountant, us, their care manager, home care people, a child, and we want to let as many people, as long as the client's okay with it, know what we're doing, so that there's always checks going on with us.
Which it occurred to me, the gentleman I was talking about before, whose ex-wife has power of attorney, and I was working with the ex-wife and with him, although I'm not not totally sure he has capacity, so that's a whole nother issue. But he was calling me on a regular basis, and he was in a panic, and I think he didn't quite get that his ex-wife and that we were on it. And he was saying, are these bills being paid? I'm going to send you $3,000. I said, no, don't send me $3,000. He thought that I would just put that in my account and pay his bills for it. He didn't quite get the process of daily money management, and I was panicked. I thought, oh no, I'm going to end up, he's going to mail me a check for $3,000, and there's no way I can put a client's check into my account, and he was okay with that finally. But sometimes I'm blindsided by things that people are going to do or want to do, and to be prepared.
I think that's where the code of ethics comes into play.
Right.
So.
I worked in financial services for 33 years. I took the CFP courses in the 1980s. But I'm just remembering nightmare things of all these things that you've gone through that were, regular. With this $3,000 sending to you, I always had a relative sit with any older person that had any diminished capacity. Because I've had 80-year-olds go down to Wells Fargo and have to make a check out to Loretta Hines, walk out the door with it. And that's not, swearing up and down, that's what I told him to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't, so you have to have someone there that, because they don't always process things through the ears. And you have to protect yourself from that too. And are they available, or are you there because there isn't anyone?
Typically, we're there because they're either estranged from their family lives out of state, their family exploited them previously, they don't get along with their family has drug and addiction issues, and so most of my clients, they use me out of necessity, not out of luxury. So that's where you really have to walk the very, very, fine line of your ethics and be above board at all times. And kind of like Doug said, you have to always be prepared looking down the road that at any time anyone can come and question what you've done and why you did what you did. And so, the documentation, the accounting, and just always having that people's perceptions are their realities. And so, documenting as much as you can and being as transparent as you can has saved me in so many cases, because I work with people that have significant disabilities and significant mental health issues. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients call the bank and say they're stealing money, and you have to, because when you're working with an older adult who might have Alzheimer's, and then with a dual diagnosis of schizophrenia or paranoia mixed in with that, it happens all the time. So you have to constantly never go from your protocol and from your policy, and never veer to the right or to the left, and just stay on path, and that's served me very well in 13 years.
And one of the things, one of my instructors has said in the fiduciary management classes I'm taking is, document, and also have a policies and procedure manual, something that says, okay, this is how I do it, because if you ever end up in court, you can say, well, I did it this way, and here's my policy manual, and this is how I always do it. And, that is just one more safeguard, because now with mandatory reporting and people becoming very aware of financial exploitation, particularly of people with dementia or older adults, we're just on the firing line, because you're working with their money and you're paying bills. So
that's what my question was about, financial exploitation. So not daily money managers that have any fiduciary role, but just daily money management in general. Would you say that it's a good preventative? If you find yourselves in situations where you were able to stop crime before it happened or got too far?
All the time.
Daily money managers are not mandatory reporters, right?
No,
In the state of
not
Colorado.
our state.
Yeah, so.
I think think it depends. I mean, as far as like the mandatory reporting, I mean, fiduciaries definitely are.
Fiduciaries are, yeah.
But I feel like everybody
It's
should be a
ethical.
mandatory reporter.
Yeah.
I do too. Yeah.
But, you know, I've been in that situation just recently where I was hired by a family member who's acting as agent under power of attorney for their parent. And she came to me because she said, my brother from out of state comes out of nowhere and wants an accounting of what I've been doing as agent for like the last 5 years. Can you help me? Okay, that's part of, I do fiduciary support services for families. Yes, let's sit down and go over this. And so, was she doing everything right? Absolutely not. Was she doing things that were questionable? Absolutely. And I felt I was in an ethical dilemma and said, is this something that I need to report? Because what she has done, she wants to fix it, and I can help her fix it and help her move, you know, do the education to say, this is what, you know, even though you're a daughter, you still have a fiduciary duty to your parent. It doesn't matter. So I had to actually go to the investigators and the detectives and work with the counties and say, in this position and what I'm doing for this person, am I considered a mandatory reporter? So I think it's always something that it's a fine line, you know, when you're working in this arena and trying to decipher, you know, what's intentional and what's ignorance and what, you know, can be fixed moving forward. So in the situation, you know, with education, it's, you know, it's stopped and now we're on a clean narrow, but it's just a prime example of people don't think that their long lost brother is going to come out of the woodworks and question what they've been doing.
An example of what, without disclosing anything that you shouldn't, but an example of what she might have been doing inappropriately.
Okay.
Because it doesn't sound like there was intent.
Right. You would have things like commingling of funds. So using my debit card, mom's debit card, going to the grocery store, sharing expenses. The parent lives with them, so it's fine if you want to have a parent pay rent who's living with you, but have an agreement, have something in writing before the parent has diminished capacity. Put everything in writing very straight out. This is room and board, what's included in your room and board? Are you paying utilities? Are you paying for groceries? What's included in this? Because you also have Medicaid issues and a whole other slew of issues that can happen down the road. Promissory notes, funding grandkids, 529 plans, you know, assistance with real estate transactions, things like that. Well, mom wanted to, you know, put her grandkids through college. Okay, most grandparents, that seems reasonable. However, the parent lacks, you know, has diminished capacity. Does she understand how that financially impacts the rest of, you know, their financial affairs and other potential siblings? And so there's lots of things that families do, and it can be as simple as, oh, well, mom pays for my cell phone bill, you know, to something as simple as that, to things that are, I mean, I've seen the most egregious acts of exploitation from all parties, from any relative, family member, so.
Right,
you know,
and
but-
you know, a lot of times I think it is from lack of understanding or not knowing. And, you know, in the olden days, my grandmother lived with us. I know there was no written document. There wasn't, I mean, she just lived with us, and she probably helped my parents out. I was very young, but I'm sure she, you know, paid for things and did it. There was no written documentation, but now, and I think a lot of families still operate that way. Grandma
Especially in
comes to
certain
live with us.
cultures.
Yeah, and you know, it's important that people understand the liabilities and the, you know, the responsibility that we have, and making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, so.
Do you keep this documentation on line records or hard copies? Because
I
one
do
of the
both.
current things is to shred all the hard copies. When I sold my practice, all those documentations of years went right into the shredder. And, you know, that's not supposed to happen.
I'm paperless, so I don't keep paper unless it's original documents like estate plans, wills, birth certificates, things like that, but I'm pretty much completely paperless other than that, so everything I keep is is digital and then backed up in several different places every night.
Copies of all those kind of certificates and things, you know, digital copies of those
Yeah, you have to
certificates.
have, you know, definitely a good
So
backup
it's fine.
system
Yeah.
in place. That's my worst nightmare is a
Yeah.
fire happening in my office. You want to see me get really panicked?
You know, that's something I didn't put. I didn't put on, that's one question I think that would be a good one to ask. I would add that if I, is what do you do for security? Asking the daily money manager, what is your security system? For example, my computer is double password protected. I use Evernote to try to be paperless, but that is also password protected, so on my computer. I keep things in the cloud. I don't have a lot of paper, but there are some things that I keep, as Courtney said, I do keep some things as paper. So, but I live in fear that computer, what if that computer just suddenly goes dead? I would think that then it's in the cloud, so I can go to my other computer and still pull it up, so. That's an important
Yeah, one
question.
of the protections is, like I got cyber fraud insurance. Because I'm like, if, you know, Toyota and Sony and Home Depot and Target can get hacked, I'm pretty sure my little server can get hacked. So, you know, so I got cyber fraud insurance to cover that because the amount of information that we're storing, whether it's in our house, office, computers, is significant. And it's not to be taken lightly. I mean,
So Joan, are you encrypted versus password protected?
Yeah, encrypted whenever it's through TrueCrypt.
Right, right. So is that something that could be a possibility of a recommendation by Adam to daily money managers to look not to password protection but encryption?
it's always, I mean, I think anything we can do to protect ourselves and our clients is always good practice. So, and, you know, that's sharing that information is what, you know, Adam and NGA and CJ, that's what we always try to do for our members. But at the end of the day, you know, obviously it's up to the member. And a lot of it is where they're at in their business. If they're brand new in business, they don't have a lot of clients, they may not be able to afford the same protections as maybe someone who's been in business for a long time and maybe might, you know, just be in a different place financially of what they can or can't afford to do. So, and that comes along with the insurance issue too, because it's very expensive to properly insure yourself in this line of work, so.
It's just, I mean, everything you say is correct, and you have to just be really careful. I have a lot of information in notebooks for each client. I worry about somebody breaking into my trunk, because I never leave it inside the car, I always go in the trunk. Yeah, or, you know, leave it on top of the car and driving off. I need a daily money manager.
My name's Courtney.
What about succession planning? Do you have someone for backup in case you're hit by a truck on the way?
As a matter of
That was
fact,
the
we
best thing that
just
came out
had
of
a
the conference last
about
week,
that.
was a whole course on succession planning and emergency replacement.
It's an important topic, certainly with daily money management, but more so if you're providing fiduciary services. So the reason being is that with daily money management, again, we're not legally tied to the client. So the client can terminate with us at any time, we can terminate with them anytime. It's a much easier and cleaner disconnect, if you will, if you want to stop providing services or they want you to stop providing services, because you're not. The true sense of daily money management is that we shouldn't be signing checks, we shouldn't be housing people's money, we shouldn't have separate bank accounts, we shouldn't be doing those things under true daily money management. So therefore, the succession planning, although it's important, it's not as significant from a liability perspective or from a life-altering perspective as with fiduciary work when you are legally tied to these people. I have people that have been with me for 12 years. I mean, you can't just say, I'm court ordered. So it's not like I can just be like, hey, you know, I'm gonna be out of business tomorrow because, you know, I wanna retire or something happened to me disability-wise. It's a much more significant obligation when you're acting as a fiduciary for someone because we are legally on the hook for them and we have everything under our control, marshaling up all of our assets. And so a succession plan is huge in fiduciary work, and you know, Everyone should have one if you're providing that service to the older adult, because one of the examples would be, and this happened to me, you have, let's say, a professional acting as an agent under power of attorney. And the client signs that power of attorney while they have capacity. Awesome. So that power of attorney is in play, the professional is working with them, whether it's financial or medical, and then all of a sudden that professional decides they want to retire or not do it anymore, they've gotten sick, they have health problems, what have you, but now all of a sudden your client's incapacitated. So guess what? They can't do any powers of attorney. So what are their options? They then have to go into the court system and go for a guardianship and conservatorship, and that's so unfair to the client. No one should be in that situation. So there are certain provisions that I put into my documents so that that never happens to my clients. So there's backups, there's things that you can do to prevent that from happening, but if you're not thinking about it upfront in your business and your client or the attorney isn't thinking about it, then you can really significantly impact someone's life by taking on that role and not properly planning.
And one thing that we've done for our power of attorney clients is we are naming our business, Elder Advocates, as their power of attorney. So if something happens to me, there's still Kristen and Laura who are there that can take over if that happens. So we put that in place to protect our clients.
In my case, over a nice dinner room in the Grand Canyon, I asked my wife, I said, who teaches a substitute teacher at preschool, I said, would you like to be a daily money manager for my clients if something happens to me? Until they can get, what I'm going to do, partly that came out of the conference, was I'm going to set up a plan that if something happens to me, if I'm incapacitated, my wife will try to help them until a new DMN can be engaged. Somebody, want someone here at this table or something like that. But at least try, as a service to the client, make that disruption as smooth as possible.
So then on the power of attorney, could there be a secondary
Yes.
set up right from the get-go, so that maybe,
And there should be.
There's a
Yeah,
successor,
yeah,
like
yeah.
with the trustees.
so that that doesn't happen, that they don't get into the court system?
Like a successor trustee
Right.
is
Right.
usually on a trust document, or should be. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's important.
But yeah, it was a real good presentation to think about incapacitation on both sides. What happens if have an emergency contact for the client, so that if something happens, all of a sudden, we know who to call.
Yeah.
And without just violating privacy, or the other thing that came up was so important is having an engagement letter that the DMN can call someone if, in their opinion, the client is suffering or has a dramatic change in their health, so that we're not hit with, well, you should have seen this client go downhill. So.
And I think on the succession planning too, just like in any business, is having a written succession plan document, and it's not something that needs to be done by a lawyer. I'm talking about more internally from a protocol or business perspective. So it's passwords, it's the client list, it's the nuances and differences between each client, what's important to know, especially with their bills. If this is every other month versus this is on ACH, this you have to manually remember to do. So it's having that plan written down so that if I get hit by a truck tomorrow, and let's just say it's even a temporary disability, that my agent under power of attorney can come in and go to my protocol document and be like, okay, this is what we gotta do, this is where she keeps this is, the banks that we need to go to, and it's just like a little user manual for whoever's gonna come in next after you, even if it's temporary, and certainly if it's gonna be more of a permanent disability or death, but just having your internal policies and procedures written somewhere about what to do in the event that you don't walk into the office tomorrow, because our clients' lives don't stop. Their bills still have to get paid, and they're vulnerable. So it's not like the typical, in the senior world, it's not the typical type A personality where if you fall off tomorrow, they can pick it up and handle their own affairs. Our clients are vulnerable and at risk. They can't do that for themselves typically. So.
If you sell your business, is it then transferable easily?
Not always.
If you're doing it as the business, not as an individual.
But the client still has the right to make their own decision of who they want to go with. So it's a harder business to sell because you can't guarantee your client base is going to move over to them. And you're still gonna have that issue if you sell it to another business and all the documents are in that company's name. So it can be a real legal issue, especially when you start dealing with like investment companies and they're saying, oh, well, this document has this company and you're a different company, and so, you know,
So you can never retire.
And live to be 100.
Well, and
you just have to properly prepare.
And some businesses are more sellable or saleable than others. You know, people who are just starting, people who only, many daily money managers only work part-time. I work for a nonprofit part-time, so I do this, I'm not a full-time daily money manager, although I put a lot of time into it. So my business would not be saleable, just because of the number of clients and how I operate, and I'm a sole proprietor. Well, actually I'm not, I'm an LLC, but it's just me. So, and that's a question to ask about the succession. That's another thing to ask a daily money manager. You know, what if something happens to you? What am I going to do? And, you know, even if it's just a matter of making sure that I've got a power of attorney that can, as Courtney said, can step in and look at my, you know, Quicken reports and know my spreadsheets and know the passwords and know where to go and what to do. So.
Sure you don't.
One thing, I had some things to add to the fiduciary, so I'll just really fast. This was something that the conference that we just came back from, there's a woman, Sherry Samaton, that practices, is a fiduciary, practices in California, and she came up with the 5A method of when you question or want to hire a fiduciary or want a private fiduciary. And so she's got able, affable, available, above board, and anchored. And the able part, of course, refers to the skills that that person has, the education, the knowledge, you know, how resourceful they are, or do they have other people that they're practicing with. And always, the questions that you would use for a daily money manager, also most or if not all of them apply to looking for a fiduciary as well. And affable, do they have people skills? Are they, you know, are they going to be, is the person that we need services for comfortable with that individual? Are they easy to get along with? Can they solve problems, or do they get real stressed and you know, in the weeds about little problems or big problems, and do they create more problem for the client? So, and are they available? Are they too busy? Do they have the time to, you know, do the work that's going to be necessary? You know, and geography is important. Where are you located? How quickly can you get to my location? The above board part is the, you know, the honesty part. What ethics do you operate under? Do you have a code of ethics? What organizations do you belong to? You know, how professional is this person? And then are they stable? The anchored part was, you know, are they level-headed? Are they stable? Do they get overwrought about problems? Because there are always problems. I learned that, you know, I thought that my ideal client was one that didn't have any problems.
Really?
I quickly learned that wasn't the case.
That was honeymoon period.
Yeah.
That was naivete.
There isn't a human being alive.
I know. Well, and one of the things I found in daily money management is they've come to me too late. I mean, not too late, but if they had come 6 months earlier, or if they had asked for help a year ago, it would have been so much easier. But then all of a sudden everything's a mess and they're not paying their bills and they don't know what to do or who to talk to, and suddenly now you've got, as a daily money manager, you've got a lot of work to do. So, with that.
Yeah, quick question on that same sheet where the 5A method. To the left, it says that the CGA website has a number of professionals in different areas that are listed. Do you all refer to that? And if you do, do you know how they vet? How they get that
Of course,
listed?
we can speak to that. She's been a member of CGA longer than I have, but.
We don't vet because it's an open membership organization, so anyone can join CGA. So there's not really a vetting process from that perspective. I think when it comes down to referrals, it's always about referring someone that you know and trust, or getting referral from someone who knows and trusts that person. So, you know, for me, if I'm ever gonna, let's say, refer a care manager or a home health company or anyone in that specific capacity where it's really important from a trust perspective, I would never refer someone that I didn't know and that I hadn't worked with before or didn't come strongly recommended. I chair a fiduciary forum group, and so we often, if I have a need for something, I'll send over like our listserv, our email listserv, and I'll say, hey, does anyone, this has happened to me, have movers that you've worked with, have downsizing companies that you've worked with, who you use to sell jewelry or appraisals? And so, again, it's using our peer group to say, who have you worked with? Because oftentimes you can come up against something just isn't anyone's business that you haven't dealt with before. So you may not have that resource in your network, but it's going to your existing network and saying, who have you used, who do you trust, who you had good experience with, and then going back to those people and say, okay, hey, I used your guy, they were great, or hey, you know, I used this person and this was my experience. And so just giving that feedback so that people are always getting good referrals.
Courtney mentioned the fiduciary forum, and that's a separate piece. People are a subgroup of the Colorado Guardianship Association, and you have to be working as a fiduciary to be part of that group. And I use that group all the time. I mean, those are people that I have met with on a regular basis, and I've listened to them talk, and I know them, and I feel real comfortable about any of those people that attend that, and I know how knowledgeable they are and how professional they are. So.
Anybody who is a fiduciary has already been through a rigorous background check?
No, and this
Really?
this could be another half-hour discussion. Colorado has
Welcome to Colorado.
very few regulations. I mean, there's probate code that you have to follow, but there are not regulations for licensure or any of that. Anybody could pop up and say, I'm a conservator. And so, although I think it's coming, we kind of know it's coming. So the fiduciary forum is, you know, we have a little legislative group, and we've been researching other states and what the regulations are. Polar opposite of Colorado is California. They've got licenses and rules and regulations and fees and for everything. It's very expensive to become a fiduciary in California, thousands of dollars. Just because.
To hire them.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
that's bad.
exactly. So we're at the other extreme. Colorado really has no regulation.
Although I will say, if you're going to be court appointed, you do have to submit to a background check and a credit check. So you can't be appointed by the courts if you don't have good credit, you've had bankruptcies, or you have something on your background check. So that's one way, just from like a court perspective, if you're going to be court appointed, there is protections there. And then that's, you know, one of the reasons why I think it's important to work with someone who's certified is because if you have the PDMM certification, they do background checks and credit checks before you can become certified. So that's another sort of way to go about that. But, you know, I think that it's all about, you know, vetting someone out as best as you can and figuring out who they are. And what I tell people when I sit down with families, I say, I'm not selling you a service. I'm not selling you to be your power of attorney. What I'm selling is trust. And if you don't absolutely 110% trust that I'm going to take care of you when you can't take care of yourself, then I'm not a good fit for you. So that's really what my value proposition is that I'm telling them and promising them that I'm going to be there for them and to take care of them and to advocate for them when they need me. I'm not selling, I provide bill paying or fiduciary work or what have you, because anybody can do that. Anybody can have the skill set. That's not the thing that I sell.
So then Adam, through their certification, there is a background check and credit check that goes along with that in order to attain that certification?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, not just for membership.
Not membership,
No, not
but for the
membership, only for the
certification.
certification.
And that's also for the NCG or the guardianship certification as well. There's,
And the
and I
guardianship.
think every 2 years you have to, I have to remember, I should know this, from all my renewals, but I think you also have to resubmit and sign like affidavits that nothing has changed, you haven't, you know.
Yeah, your disclosures, but then are you rechecked? Are you re-background and credit?
See, I think with NCG you are, but I'm not sure. I don't think with Adam we do the annual rechecks, but I'll have to check because it's a totally different certifying.
Yeah, like a
body.
CSAs, we're background checked in order to get it initially, but then we're background checked every 3 years.
Yeah.
So you can't recertify
Right.
if anything comes up in your back.
Yeah, we have a separate certification board that's separate from our board of directors. So that we can try to keep things as separate and neutral as possible with our certification.
And is it a national check, national background check?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But really, the national is great, and that's like what I do on my staff. So, you know, back to questions to ask if you're working with someone who has staff, what are their hiring procedures?
Right.
So I don't just do like a credit check and a national background check. I do a state background check, I do county, I do local, because I attended a presentation, and what I learned is that by time those local, city, county things trickle up or things trickle down, it could be years apart before everyone's records and systems are synced. So I do, you know, everywhere they've ever lived, every county that they've ever lived, and I've caught someone that I almost hired that had like 5 aliases. And she ended up having like liens and bankruptcies, and I'm like, I told you I was gonna do, like, were you calling my bluff? Did you not think I was gonna check these things? So, you know, it's really doing your due diligence
Yes.
when it comes to hiring staff or hiring just an individual.
Yeah, because when you get down to this, you know, question at the end, are you the person whom I'll be working with? That everything that applies to the owner or the superior, you know, needs to apply to that person as well.
Absolutely.
This was fantastic.
And also one more thing to add. About insurance, the courts will not ask if the court-appointed person, conservator, has insurance or not. I met a professional fiduciary yesterday who said that she didn't have any type of liability insurance whatsoever, and she's been doing this for years. So that's.
She's court-appointed?
It's common. I mean, there's people who've been doing this for 20 years who are excellent. I would trust them handling my own stuff. They have been the pioneers of this in Colorado, but they don't have insurance or they aren't certified because they're kind of like, well, I've been doing this for 25 years, like that should account for something. So, you know, I think we're having sort of that wave and that, you know, pendulum swinging back and forth as far as we grow as an industry.
Right.
So.
And just, hang on, to speak to yours, about 5 years ago, there was a big article in Denver Post where these court-appointed attorneys, licensed, were charging full hourly fees to walk the client through the park from their house or something. So a 1 hour walk was costing the client $350 and stuff like that. So the licensing is sometimes good, sometimes bad. You had a question?
Well, that's the same way as becoming a registered investment advisor. They drop out of the supervision of a broker-dealer and they drop their E&O insurance. They're the ones that you read about in the paper. But where do you advertise, or how do you get clients? Are you affiliated with a bank, credit unions? What is your stream of income? I mean, of referrals? Because I wouldn't have, you know, even experience, I wouldn't have a clue where to find somebody like you.
You do now.
What you do. Our names are on there. It's right there.
Well, number one, without a doubt, are elder law attorneys. We get a lot of referrals from the elder law attorneys up in northern Colorado. And we do some advertising. Now we're doing an ad in the 50+ Marketplace News in Weld County. Haven't gotten a client from it yet, but we're running that a year and we'll see. So.
I advertising has been spectacularly unsuccessful for me. So it's a warm referral. It's got to be somebody that knows you, that is confident in you. So it has to be an attorney, someone like yourselves, a personal caregiver that takes care of the person. It has to be, my experience is it has to be a referral from another professional.
Yeah, I think early in my career, it was really networking with other professionals. I feel I'm blessed. I'm at the point in my career where I'm 100% referral based, and I get referrals from people that I worked with 10 years ago who I happened to be on a case with and who might have been representing a different family member or someone else. So you never know what client you take on or what case you take on that might lead to something down the road because you're working in their team, in their support team. So getting referrals from care managers that, we shared a client with 5 years ago. So that's sort of just the benefit of when you do a good job and you have a good reputation and you work your code of ethics and, you take what you do seriously, then down the road, it just naturally comes because people trust you and they've seen what you do. But
So you'll all pass out the cards.
We will.
On one of the sheets, all their contact information.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I'm a good
And
card
I
person.
am reprinting my cards and brochures, so I did not bring them, but you have them. I know. Shame. Joan, do you
you
want
can find it on the website though.
Yes,
Yes.
but it's there. And actually, my referrals, I've had a few from this group, but I've also had them from the nonprofit that I work for. Our executive director has directed a friend of his to me because it's not, what I do is not exactly what the nonprofit does. So he trusts me enough and is comfortable enough with me that he gave my name to a friend. And and we had a call into our office, and it wasn't something that the nonprofit did, but the receptionist directed them to me. So they come from everywhere. But most, as Doug said, most of them are word of mouth and meeting people and really feeling comfortable with that person. So.
Well, I can't thank you enough. You were great. I mean, talk about really getting down into the real meat of not only overall what you do, but then the very specific, and what to look for. I think that one of the biggest problems is that there are so many services out there for seniors, and to be able to get to decipher one from the other and to know the questions to ask when hiring. I think that's one of the best customer service things you could ever do for us as professionals who want to have good referrals, but then for the senior and their families themselves. So all of this is so meaty. Sometimes you get handouts that are just nice to have. But
Advertisements.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is incredibly meaty stuff, and I really appreciate all of you. You did an extraordinary job. Thank you.
Thank you.
You did.